For 2 years, August 2nd, 2026, sat in every compliance calendar in Europe as the date the AI Act would finally bite. It was the moment the high-risk regime became enforceable, requiring any organization running consequential AI to show its work. That changed when headlines began circulating about AI Act deadlines being delayed. A professional consensus formed around the idea that the pressure was off. Based on that consensus, many organizations quietly stood their compliance programs down, deferring their primary obligations. The August 2nd deadline remained active, but its focus narrowed. It became sharper and more immediate for almost every business using generative AI. Organizations relying on guidance published before July are acting on information that has been superseded. This mistake creates immediate exposure to a penalty of 15 million euros, or 3% of global annual turnover. The confusion is rooted in the Digital Omnibus on AI, a late amendment package approved by the European Parliament in June 2026. This package split the calendar into two speeds: high-risk obligations under Annex 1 and 3, covering recruitment tools, medical devices, and essential services, slit down the timeline. Regulators demanded conformity against non-existent technical benchmarks, pushing these heavy regimes to late 2027 and 2028. While that expensive regime moved, the single most universally applicable duty in the entire Act remained on the original schedule. Article 50, which covers transparency obligations, was left out of the deferral entirely. These rules apply to specific categories of AI regardless of their overall risk classification. The law mandates disclosure in 4 specific situations, affecting both providers and deployers. First, AI interaction disclosure. If a person talks to a chatbot or voice assistant, they must be told they are speaking to an AI. Second, synthetic content marking requires providers of generative systems to mark outputs so they can be detected downstream. Third, deepfake labeling requires deployers to disclose when they publish artificial media that resembles real people or events. Finally, organizations must disclose AI-generated text used to inform the public on matters of public interest. All 4 of these requirements became active and enforceable on August 2nd, 2026. Any organization triggering these quadrants is subject to active regulation right now. Compliance depends on whether a company is acting as an AI provider or an AI deployer. A provider builds the system and handles the technical marking of the data. A deployer uses third-party models to reach audiences, carrying the burden of labeling and disclosure. On August 2nd, enforcement power moved to national market surveillance authorities across the EU. This capacity is decentralized. Each member state now has the power to investigate and fine organizations within its borders. The Commission also gained the power to investigate and fine providers of general-purpose AI on this same date. A rule that previously existed only on paper now carries active, decentralized enforcement power. Exactly one element of Article 50 received extra time: Article 50, Section 2. This exception applies only to the machine-readable marking requirement on the provider side. It is a 4-month grace period ending permanently on December 2nd, 2026, restricted to generative systems already on the market before August 2nd. Any new system placed on the market after that date must comply immediately. Deployer duties, such as deepfake labeling and public interest text disclosures, remain live and were never part of this grace period. The same package also enacted a non-deferrable ban on AI-generated non-consensual intimate imagery under Article 5. Interpreting the narrow accommodation as a general postponement of the AI Act is a fundamental misreading of the law. For organizations managing large property portfolios, these rules represent a shift in the daily operating environment. The first step is an inventory of every active AI system that interacts with a user or generates content. The most frequently missed operational risk is generative AI used for externally published text. Each system must be mapped to one of the 4 Article 50 triggers to identify where compliance flags must be integrated into the code. This mapping determines whether the organization is acting as a provider or a deployer at each specific point in the data flow. While technical standards are being finalized, the Commission's June 2026 Code of Practice provides a baseline for demonstrating compliance. Article 50 compliance is now the fundamental operating condition for running AI-assisted content in the EU. Many companies use the current lack of clarity to justify delaying their compliance programs. It is true that early enforcement by national authorities will likely be uneven at first. It is also true that the exact technical standards for marking are still being settled. However, in a regulated market, the cost of building disclosure into a system now is small. That cost is negligible compared to the expense of retrofitting compliance into a live system while under an active enforcement action. Widespread industry confusion has never served as a valid defense before a market surveillance authority. The August 2nd deadline did not disappear. It changed shape to focus on transparency. Any organization that stood down its program because of a headline deferred the wrong obligation and is now operating outside the law.